Good afternoon. Thank you all for coming. It's really exciting to be having our 25th anniversary of .ca, to have our AGM for the first time in Ottawa, which is kind of surprising. It's taken us this long to get here since CIRA is actually based out of Ottawa. Before we get into the AGM portion, a few housekeeping items. I'd just like to review how voting will be used. There'll be a few items on which we'll be voting today. The first point is that only CIRA members can vote. When a vote takes place, we ask that everyone in the room please remain in the room and seated. You'll vote by raising your voting card that looks something like this. You should have a copy of it in your AGM kit, so if you can get it nearby, that would be very handy to speed things up. For those who are on the webcast, there'll be some instructions on the screen, so please just read that, and when the time is called to vote, please vote as quickly as possible, because there is some delay between the webcast and this, and I'd like to make sure everybody has a chance to vote. And with that, I'd like to call the meeting to order. In accordance with our bylaws, Michael Stewart, CIRA's General Counsel, will act as Secretary, and I will be acting as your Chair. I've been advised that we have a quorum of 100 members present in the room, and will declare the meeting duly constituted. Today's agenda, there's a copy of it also in your kit, and a copy was also sent to all members on August 8th. We will be making a small change in the order of the agenda. Items 5 and 6 will be flipped. We'll do the presentation of the auditor's report, followed by the summary of the financial statements. And if there are no other corrections or changes to the agenda, I would take those as approved. Thank you. Our last AGM was held in September 20th of 2011 in Vancouver. Minutes of that meeting are also in your AGM kit, and a copy was sent to all members on August 8, 2012. I'd ask if there's any questions, comments, or changes to those. Hearing none, I would take, this is the audience participation time of the thing, a motion to approve the minutes. Don't all raise your hand at once. No, really, we can't go on unless somebody raises their hand. Gentleman in the back, your name, please. Thank you, Simon. And a seconder, sir, right there. Thank you, Chris. Motion is moved. If there's no further discussion, we'll take a vote on approving the minutes. All those in favor, please raise your card. And online, please. Thank you. I think we'll declare the minutes as approved. I'll now move into the next item of business, the report of the Board of Directors. And before I do that, I'd like to introduce your 2011-2000 CIRA Board of Directors. And I'd ask if they could all stand as I call their name. Carrie Brown, Andrew Escobar, Jim Gray, John King, Rowena Liang, Louise McDonald, Susan Hennick, Barry Schell, Bill Sano, and finally Victoria Withers. Also with us today are our three ex officio directors, Heather Dryden, who represents the Government of Canada on CIRA's board, Byron Holland, who you already met, our CEO, and John Demko, who is the founder of .ca. It's true, .ca is 25 years. In terms of internet time, 25 years is an eternity. Back in 1987, there was no way for people like John Demko to have foreseen where the internet is today. The technological breakthroughs, like the astronomical increases in speed, the rise of mobile, and the role the internet would play in economic development and human rights. All unforeseeable, but all realized. So we find ourselves in a fortunate position today because although we can never predict the future, the history of internet has taught us two things. Expect the unexpected and hold on to your hats because it's going to be a wild ride. As an organization, we are always looking for new and better ways to communicate with our stakeholders, our members, customers, private and public sector partners. With that as our driver, we lead our international counterparts in terms of social media adoption. As an organization, we were an early adopter of this medium and have continued to adopt and evaluate these tools. As an aside, I can tell you that year-over-year growth rates from our social media properties have been incredible, almost 400% from our YouTube video channel alone. We are a member-based organization. CIRA members are a key component to the governance of the organization. Not only are the Board of Directors elected by the membership, but CIRA members also play a critical role in shaping how the organization operates. At the beginning of this year, we undertook a review of our governance structure. One goal was to produce a more effective board and to see at the same time if we could streamline the process by which we select directors. Anecdotal feedback at the time from our stakeholders had told us that the process was long, tedious, and complicated. The Governance Committee of the Board undertook a review of the processes and structures. They produced a framework that would result in a smaller board elected by a single ballot. We proposed this to the CIRA members in outreach in April. And out of the 15,000 members, we unfortunately only received 26 comments on this of giving us feedback. The feedback that we did receive, though, expressed great concern over the size of the board and also the elimination of one side of the slate. So we learned a few things from this. The first thing we learned was that there seemed to be some concern regarding our nomination committee. We're very proud of the results of that, but as has been alluded several times in our discussions, our nomination committee can look a little bit like electing the Pope. The nom-com goes in, there's a puff of smoke, and out comes a slate. We realized that, and we're going to be working over the next few years to try and improve that transparency through a series of changes. We're also going to try and enhance our communication to try and better explain why we are trying to make such a change. And the last bit that we're hoping to learn is that our member engagement needs to improve so that we can hit a wider range of members, because at the board and the organization found it very hard to act on 26 pieces of feedback. The other side of that, though, is that we also ask you, the members, that when we do engage, to give us feedback as well, because it's the only way that we can perform our duties. I'd like to move on to some of the key accomplishments of the 2011 and 2012 fiscal year that I'm particularly proud of. For more than a decade, CIRA has been responsible for running two critical components of the Internet: the .ca registry of nearly 2 million domain names, or the DNS as it's called, and that DNS connects the Internet users around the world to your .ca sites that they seek. Fundamentally, CIRA works hard to develop high-quality services that ensure that Canadians have safe and secure Internet experiences. With that in mind, this last fiscal year was one where CIRA made gains to position .ca for the future in the face of both known and unknown challenges. There are three areas that we've been working on that are important to the organization from that standpoint. The first I'd like to talk about is IPv6. IPv6 is the Internet's next generation addressing protocol. Right now, the Internet uses a protocol called IPv4, which allows approximately 4 billion unique devices to be connected to the Internet. But as you can probably figure out quite quickly, even though that has brought us to the rapid expansion of the Internet that we have up till today, it will not last us much longer. Already, the Asia-Pacific region has run out of IPv4. The European region announced this week that they were on their last portions, and North America is not far behind. IPv6 will bring us many more addresses, 340 undecillion to be precise, and I'll let you Google that with your smartphone to see how many zeros that is. But we're hoping that will take us for a long time to come. CIRA has been on the forefront of Canada for the adoption of IPv6. We've had our DNS servers online on IPv6 for years. We participated in World IPv6 Day last June and brought our website online, and over the next year we'll be bringing some of the remaining portions of our infrastructure online. CIRA's staff have also been in the field at various international forums, domestically and internationally, promoting the need for businesses, consumers, and government organizations to adopt IPv6. The next topic I'd like to talk about is DNSSEC. DNSSEC will be adding a layer of security on top of the DNS system that I mentioned earlier that will create a more trusted and safe, secure environment. For those of you who have been hearing me speak for the last few years, you probably heard me speak about this several times and probably saying, well, when is it coming? It's a very complicated technology to deploy, and CIRA has been taking a very prudent approach, watching some of the other, because some of our other counterparts who have deployed it have run into operational issues and suffered downtime. It's very complicated technology. Being an engineer by trade, I would kind of analogize it to the plane is already in the air and you're trying to make repairs while it's in flight. So it's something you want to do very carefully and very slowly. But the good news is that we hope to be rolling out DNSSEC in a final form in the next few weeks. I had the pleasure of being involved in the signing ceremony just a few weeks ago, where the last portions of the system were put into place. It's in final testing now, and we hope to be deploying it in the near future. CIRA is also very proud to have partnered with the .se registry on the open source software OpenDNSSEC. This is software that CIRA itself is using, but is also available to other organizations around the world to help them deploy OpenDNSSEC, and we're very proud of that partnership. Finally, I'll talk about internationalized domain names. Currently, CIRA does not allow for the registration of domain names that include French accented characters. In 2011 and over the last year, we consulted with Canadians, both policy and technical experts, on the best way to deploy this technology. The results of that consultation are in, and we're happy to announce the policy is now in place, and we hope to be offering the ability to register domain names with accents early in the new year in February. This will bring .ca to all Canadians, French and English. In a few minutes, Byron will also update you on some of the other activities in the past year. As he speaks, and for the rest of the day, as the rest of the day unfolds, please keep that in mind. Getting up on stage and listing our accomplishments from the past year simply does not do them justice. These are all innovative, forward-looking, and critical initiatives. .ca is not just another country code top-level domain. We are becoming the envy of the TLD world. Our technical and business processes are domestic activities to support the Internet. Our involvement in international Internet governance fora are becoming the envy of global counterparts. As Canada's top-level domain, we have a lot to be proud of. And it is you, the community of CIRA, members and Canadian Internet stakeholders, who have made this possible. I'd like to thank you for your time, and I'd like to invite at this time Byron Holland to deliver the President's report. Thank you very much.
We certainly have had a number of milestones this year, like this being the 25th anniversary of .ca, or the fact that we'll crack 2 million domain names under registration this year. Milestones, I think, provide us an opportunity to reflect on some of these achievements. And in my opinion, milestones are also the opportunity, or provide the opportunity, to not only assess where you've been, but really think about where we're headed and what the next milestone is going to be. Where will CA be, or where will .ca be in 2037, 25 years from now? When are we going to reach 3 million or 4 million domain names registered, or .cas registered? Will every Canadian have one eventually? Or will we be in an all-app, all-Twitter world, or an all-Facebook world? And when you think of it in those terms, you start to see how the world around us is really changing around the business that we're in. And you start to see how and where you need to evolve as an organization to continue to be relevant, to continue to be successful, to continue to deliver the service to Canadians that we're supposed to. So what do we as the manager of the .ca domain need to do to get to that next milestone, whatever it may end up being? I think the activities of the past fiscal year, 2011-2012, have really actually put us on that path, and that's what I'd like to talk a bit about today, is some of the major milestones. Needless to say, there's lots of everyday work, but these are some of the major things that .ca has undertaken in the past year. And I think it's very relevant because our industry is changing dramatically. So in the past fiscal year, the Internet Corporation for the Assignment of Names and Numbers, or ICANN, the global body that governs the Internet, has accepted applications for new generic top-level domains. So those are the .coms, nets, orgs that we're all familiar with. It's been a very closed environment to date. But ICANN has received almost 2,000 applications, and this represents the largest expansion in the history of the domain space. So think about that. We all know com, net, org. How many do you know past that? Well, ICANN has just received 2,000 applications for new ideas, be it .shoes, .nfl, .whatever, .brand. And that's going to be a major change in the history of the modern Internet. New GTLDs, is what they're called, generic top-level domains, are expected to be introduced mid-2013, so within the next 12 months, and represent a significant change to the marketplace that we're in, and new competition for all of us in this space, including .ca. Fundamentally, this is like deregulating an industry, and we're about to go through deregulation. It's my opinion that our activities over the past few years have positioned .ca well to compete in this new landscape and to succeed. Part of this, will also include our commitment to foster an improved internet experience overall for all Canadians, and to continue to be relevant to all Canadians, to innovate, to enhance our marketing, and I think we had some pretty good lessons there. I know I'll be talking to our Twitter guy, who's I think one of those really strong actors in the Twitter space, about what we can continue to do to communicate even better than we do. About our strong relationships with our channel partners, the folks who actually sell .ca into the marketplace, and a commitment to the highest levels of security. Those are the types of things that are going to sustain our leadership in the Canadian internet landscape. So let me explain some of the things to really back that up. In the past fiscal year, CIRA's financial management and policies and practices have been significantly revamped and strengthened. New and experienced team members in the finance area have been added, and the finance team itself now plays a really leading role in our planning and strategy. We've also adopted a new 3-year strategic plan with the coming deregulation of our space. Having a longer-term view is going to be absolutely critical, and to make sure our organizational goals are in line with these new market realities. Now, these internally focused initiatives are really rooted in our commitment to continuous improvement, to operational excellence, and probably most importantly, to the effective stewardship of this resource for all Canadians, the .ca. Without a doubt, the technical side is critical, and progress has continued on that front with various systems over the past fiscal year. We did a major refresh of the .ca registry itself this past year to align with global, really with global best practices. It was completed in the spring and went live in June of a couple of months ago. We've also continued to make significant improvements as a result of changing our technological environment, or the technological environment in which we exist. As I think most people are aware, the internet is running out of generation IPv4 addresses, as Paul has mentioned. So it's important that Canadians really start to take up IPv6 and adopt IPv6. And to this end, CIRA has really been leading the way in terms of developing processes and policies for the adoption of IPv6 in the Canadian landscape. Last fiscal year, we made our corporate infrastructure, including all of our public website, IPv6 ready, and it will remain that way permanently. As the domain name registry, we are ever vigilant about ensuring a safe and secure internet for Canadians, and we take that responsibility very, very seriously. One of the major security-related projects that we've done this past year has been domain name security extensions, or DNSSEC, because in our business we can never have enough acronyms. But DNSSEC is an important set of extensions that provide an extra layer of security, a really fundamental security. And CIRA is committed to providing the Canadian internet with a safe, secure, and trusted online experience, and DNSSEC is the next critical step in ensuring that. We've been hard at work preparing to implement DNSSEC into the .ca, and while much of the work has been completed thus far this year, I'm pleased to tell you that we're also well on the path to actually signing the zone, or in effect bringing it into production, final production. And because we are committed to a healthy internet in Canada, we will continue to work with our partners in the internet community writ large to affect DNSSEC. It's not just about what we do, It's about adoption across the entire Canadian environment, the entire ecosystem. Last fiscal year, there was some well-publicized malware circulating on the internet. Many of you will probably remember it. It was called DNS Changer. And in fact, in Canada, there were 20,000 affected IP addresses. So it had significant penetration in the Canadian landscape. But CIRA worked with the Cyber Incident Response Center at Public Safety, or it's otherwise known as a CERT. And we developed and hosted an online tool to help people screen their own computers for this malware. Since it was launched, DNS Checker, which was the tool we developed, has screened more than 1 million computers in Canada, and we identified over 1,400 of them that were actually affected with the virus, or affected with the malware. And then we were able to lead those folks to resolution in terms of helping them clean up their computers. So when we say that .ca is safe and secure, that's an example of how we actually, we really take that to heart in terms of trying to maintain a clean and pristine .ca landscape. In terms of the .ca product itself, this past fiscal year was certainly a very busy one. We consulted with Canadians about a number of things, including French accented characters and adding them into the .ca domain space. We will be implementing those later this fiscal year, sometime during Q1 of 2013. So .ca will include the full bilingual character set, and it clearly will reflect both the official languages in Canada as a result. Of course, we do more than just run the .ca registry and the underlying DNS infrastructure. We have a significant mandate to give back to the Canadian internet environment. And I think we do this through a variety of different initiatives. In 2010, 2011, so 2 years ago, CIRA introduced the Canadian Internet Forum. And that was really a first ever national dialogue with Canadians about a range of issues related to internet governance that affect Canadians and that Canadians were concerned about. It proved to be, I think, very successful for a first event. And we held a second CIF as a result here in Ottawa this past February. Why would we want to have a dialogue with Canadians about the internet? Well, let me put it this way. Most Canadians, really as much as we think about the internet, most Canadians don't give a lot of thought to it, about how it runs, or even really who runs it, even though it is one of the most powerful economic and social drivers of change that certainly our society, and I think you could make a pretty strong case for any society, has ever seen. And earlier this year, we convened a panel at the Canadian Internet Forum, a panel of experts to help discuss those issues. And the result, I thought, was actually a really fascinating discussion. And this will be a little plug. The YouTube video, or the video is available on the CIRA YouTube channel. But it's a really interesting discussion by global experts about some of the core issues facing us at the global internet level, as well as the domestic Canadian one. And I'd encourage you to watch it. It's not too long, but there's some really interesting insights. The internet has really, I think we can all agree, has significantly enhanced the standard of living for literally billions of people around the world. It's given a voice to the voiceless. It's enabled the spread of democracy that we've all been witness to over the past couple of years. And we all, I think, are benefiting from the growth of the internet, whether you're in a developed or developing nations. Yet, most of us barely give a passing thought to its governance. Yet, when we feel our digital rights, which we all assume we have, are being trampled on, we come together and fight. And I can name any number of instances over the past year or years, particularly this past year, including, how can we all forget the SOPA debacle in the US, or the online surveillance bill here in Canada that was introduced just earlier this year. Yet, as digital citizens, we certainly have digital rights, but with those rights have to come digital responsibilities. And I think that responsibility when it comes to internet governance is really about being informed about how the internet is run, about how it develops. And we have the responsibility really to get involved and to protect this incredibly valuable resource we all share. And it's through things like the CIF, the Canadian Internet Forum, that we provide the opportunity, that CIRA provides the opportunity for all Canadians to do just that. And in February 2012, so this past February, after a 3-month consultation with Canadians, we convened the second CIF, which is a national event and really helped us explore the debate around the future of the internet domestically, but also globally, because as we all know, the internet knows no borders. That event attracted 434 participants, so there is interest in global governance, and that was almost a 20% increase over the previous year, which we were very pleased about, and I think shows the growing understanding that there's a need to get engaged in this subject. And this coming November, I'll be presenting the resulting white paper, which was the white paper that came out of our CIF event, to the Global Internet Governance Forum to be held in Baku, Azerbaijan. CIRA will continue to do this kind of research and outreach as part of ensuring our continued leadership in the internet space and our support for the Canadian internet community. So please stay tuned, because on that front we'll have an announcement regarding the 2012-2013 CIF later this month. So check back on our website for information about that. But making the infrastructure of Canada's internet more robust is really fundamentally a long-term goal of CIRA. And with this in mind, Internet Exchange Points, or also known as IXPs, so one more acronym for your glossary, those were identified as a priority for CIRA, for the organization this year. So for those of you who aren't really familiar with Internet Exchange Points, the fact that we don't have many, we have one major one in Toronto and a smaller one here in Ottawa, results in the fact that much of Canada's domestic internet traffic actually flows outside of this country before eventually reaching its destination back inside the country. And that can be as straightforward as I send an email to my neighbor across the street, and it may transit Chicago before it gets to the guy that I can yell across the street to. What IXPs do is allow network traffic to take fundamentally shorter and faster paths between member networks, improving the traffic flow on the internet and certainly on the major backbones, helping not only to improve performance but reduce congestion on the various major network backbones. And we've been working with a number of community-based organizations from across the country in an effort to facilitate the development of more IXPs across Canada. And just to give you a comparison, the US has 85, we have 2. Brazil has 36. Tanzania has 2. So it gives you a bit of a sense of where we are in terms of the development of Internet Exchange Points. Because fundamentally, Internet Exchange Points are about enhanced performance, improving security, speed, network resilience for sure, while maximizing the amount of traffic that stays domestic in Canada while it transits from point to point in Canada. And to this end, we're working closely with the Canadian internet community to develop a viable IXP infrastructure in this country. So facilitating the development of IXs is only one of a number of activities that we have undertaken to improve Canada's internet experience. CIRA has always been an active participant in international internet governance, and we tend to hold a fair amount of influence in that space. We've been in it for a while, and I would argue that we tend to fight above our weight in the internet governance space globally. We're particularly active with the Internet Corporation for the Assignment of Names and Numbers, or ICANN, which is really the organization that is at the core of the international internet governance world. The CIRA team has participated with ICANN from literally the very beginning of ICANN's existence, when the governance of the internet globally sort of really started to get organized. And I'm proud to say that actually this October, between the 14th and 19th, CIRA will be hosting the global ICANN meeting, where all of the actors who are really responsible for the governance and coordination of the internet get together to deal with legal issues, policy issues, security, technology, and a whole host of other governance issues that surround the internet. We'll be hosting that in Toronto, October 14th to 19th. It's one of 3 meetings around the world that ICANN hosts each year, and it's only the 3rd meeting that's ever been hosted in Canada. I'd like to note that, like many of the things in the internet governance space, this meeting is open to all. I mean, the internet space truly is a multi-stakeholder, bottom-up environment, and this meeting is open to anybody who wants to register. So even as a citizen not involved in the internet governance space per se, you're welcome to come to the event, to register, and then to sit in and attend all of the meetings associated with these various internet governance issues. So if you want to take a deep dive into the internet, Toronto, October is a great place to do it, and we'd love to see more of you there. So I invite you to get involved in this essential grassroots internet body, and you can please feel free to visit CIRA.ca for more information. It's right on our homepage. It's easy to find. So in 2011, CIRA presented the inaugural .ca Impact Awards to recognize people and organizations who use their .ca sites to make a difference in the lives of their users and into the broader Canadian internet community. We presented awards in 4 different categories, including the public sector, not-for-profit, e-learning, and small business, and applications. The Impact Awards have really quickly become one of our flagship programs, and the success of this program has led us to continue it in 2012, and I'm pleased to note that the awards applications actually increased by 26% over 2011. So we're getting very, very strong adoption in all of those categories. So we've had 25 years of .ca, a dozen years of CIRA operating the .ca. We're about to crack 2 million domain names under management. I think these are major milestones that give us pause to reflect on where we've been and where we're going. I want to thank you for being members in this organization, because in order to be one of the best bottom-up, member-driven internet organizations in the world, it's critical that we have great members who participate and who engage. We are one of the fastest-growing country code top-level domains. We're extremely well respected in the global internet community and in the various international governance venues. And today is a day to reflect on those successes, but also to recognize that this is the internet. As we heard earlier, MySpace owned that space a couple of years ago, and where are they now? The internet never sleeps, it never rests, and it's an incredibly fast-moving environment. So we can never be satisfied, even with our successes. We have to be focused on what's coming and our ability to adapt to that and to deliver what Canadians need in the coming year and years from .ca. So, thank you very much. I appreciate everybody being here.
Thank you for that, Byron. So we'll keep moving here quickly. I'll enter the next 2 agenda items. I'd first ask Sheldon Gunn of KPMG to come up and present the auditor's report. Sheldon, and right after that we'll have Rowena Liang, our audit chair, present the financial statements.
As Paul mentioned, I'm Sheldon Gunn. I'm partner with KPMG Chartered Accountants. I am the audit partner responsible for the financial statement audit of CIRA. I am pleased here to present our independent auditor's report. We have audited the financial statements of the Canadian Internet Registration Authority, which comprise the statement of financial position as at March 31st, 2012, the statement of operations, changes in net assets and cash flows for the year then ended, and the notes, which comprise a significant summary of significant accounting policies and other explanatory information. Management is responsible for the preparation and fair presentation of the financial statements in accordance with Canadian generally accepted accounting principles, and for such internal controls as management deems necessary in the preparation and fair presentation of the statements that are free from material misstatements, whether due to error or fraud. As auditors, our responsibility is to express an opinion on these financial statements based on our audit. We conducted our audit in accordance with Canadian generally accepted auditing standards. Those standards require that we comply with ethical requirements and plan and perform an audit to obtain reasonable assurance about whether the financial statements are free from material misstatement. An audit involves performing procedures to obtain audit evidence about the amounts and disclosures in the financial statements. Those procedures selected depend on our judgment, including an assessment of risk of material misstatement to those financial statements. In making those risk assessments, we consider internal control to the entity's preparation of the financial statements, sufficient for us to design our procedures, but not sufficient to express an opinion on internal control. An audit also includes evaluating the appropriateness of the accounting policies used and the reasonableness of accounting estimates made by management, as well as evaluating the overall presentation of the financial statements. We believe that the audit evidence we have obtained during our audit is sufficient and appropriate to provide a basis for our audit opinion. In our opinion, the financial statements present fairly, in all material respects, the financial position of the Canadian Internet Registration Authority as at March 31st, 2012, and its results of operations and its cash flows for the year then ended in accordance with Canadian generally accepted accounting principles. Our report is dated July 12th, 2012.
Thank you, Sheldon. Our auditor just have presented us an opinion without qualification on our financial statement. That means that we have received a clean and favorable opinion from our auditors. This unqualified opinion means that our financial statement as present fairly in all material respect our financial position and operating results as of March 31st, 2012. So now what I will do is share with you some highlights of our 2012 financial statements. What you will find in the full set of audited financial statements is enclosed in the back flap of the member's report. You find that in your package. After my presentation, the board chair, Paul Andersen, will invite questions from the audience after we appoint the auditors. Okay. So now I have to warn you that it's going to be hard for me to compete with Scott, but I'm going to try to make this really awesome. Okay. Let me begin our presentation of the financial position with the asset side of the balance sheet. Cash held in our operating account decreased by approximately $2 million over the previous year. Now, this decrease is primarily because we shifted assets, transferred the funds into our restricted investment account. The remainder of the current asset is comprised of accounts receivable and also prepaid expenses. Accounts receivable is primarily interest received, and prepaid expenses are mostly prepaid contracts, maintenance and support contracts. At the end of the year, our restricted investment balance is slightly over $19.5 million, and that is up $3 million from our previous year, which is 16.5. Restricted investment are set aside by the board under board's direction for the following four purposes. First of all, we want to prudently hold an amount equivalent to our deferred revenue balances. Deferred revenue are funds that we receive from registration for which CIRA has not yet provided service. So it's revenue that we have yet to earn. Secondly, we wanted to accumulate enough sufficient funds and resources so that CIRA can sustain or invest in additional capital assets as warranted over a long-term planning horizon. Thirdly, and if necessary, is to act as working capital so that CIRA can continue to pay vendors in a timely fashion and also meet our payroll, our employees, our commitment to our employees. And lastly, it's to act as a contingency fund, again, if necessary, for emergency purposes, such as business interruption, disaster, or sudden adverse market conditions. All of our investments are held in accordance with CIRA's investment policy. The fund set aside is ready for us, available for our future requirements. The investment approach that we take is conservative, with a primary focus and emphasis on preserving capital preservation. The investment decisions are made collaboratively with our advisors from TD Waterhouse, management, and also oversight from the board. Under capital assets, CIRA has invested a further $1.8 million in capital infrastructure in the fiscal year 2012. And this is to ensure that we have a safe, secure, and resilient .ca registry and also our domain name system. Net of related depreciation and amortization of $1.3 million, our total capital asset increased approximately $500,000 in the last fiscal year. On the liability side, and the net asset side of the balance sheet, we have undercurrent liabilities, accounts payable, and accrued liabilities. These are liabilities that we incur just through the normal course of the business. Customer deposits are from the registrars, and it reflects funds that we are holding in their account to fund ongoing transactions, renewals, and transfers. And the last two items under current liabilities are current portion of the deferred revenue and the current portion of our lease inducement. Overall, our current and long-term liabilities have increased by $1.2 million and $600,000 respectively, whereas our net assets have pretty well remained flat. The primary driver of liability increase relates to our deferred revenue. As I mentioned earlier, deferred revenue are revenue that we have yet to be earned, and then we have to continue to provide future services. The deferred revenue balance have grown pretty well in line with the underlying domain under management. At the end of our year, our current and long-term portion of deferred revenue totaled $14.9 million, which is, and that's compared to $13.2 million in our previous fiscal year. This is a $1.7 million increase. By providing domain name registration services and resolution throughout the current year, the current portion of deferred revenue balance of $9.8 million will be recognized into revenue in the fiscal year 2013. And the long-term deferred revenue portion, and it's a balance of $5.1 million, will begin to earn that after March 31st, 2013. Now let us turn our attention to the statements of operation. Total revenue for the fiscal year 2012 were $15.6 million, and this is a $2.3 million or 17% increase over the previous fiscal year. This increase was primarily driven by registration growth throughout the course of the business. CIRA closed the fiscal year over 19 million domain names under management, And this is an increase of $245,000, 245,000 domains, I'm too many dollars in my mind, domain over the previous fiscal year. Total operating expenditures in fiscal year 2012 were $15.7 million and $3.8 million increase over the last fiscal year. Now keep in mind that last year, our expenditure in salaries and consulting would have been $600,000 higher prior to capitalization of our .ca registry as an intangible asset. In fiscal year 2012, we made a conscious decision to invest in our human resources. Our full-time and temporary staff increased from 53 to 57 in 2012. In addition, complementary investments were also made in consulting and training of our staff. And this is really to focus on enhancing our human capital and to improve our core competencies, specifically or particularly in areas such as finance, development, and internet and network security. These investments have actually are made to support our infrastructure activities, like IPv6 readiness, DNSSEC planning, redesign of our core network and security infrastructure, and also implementation of our middleware platform. Accordingly, this is reflected also in expenditure increases in the following categories. We have increased consulting by $1.4 million, salaries and benefit $1.2 million. There's a staff training and development cost of increase of $400,000, and also depreciation and amortization pertaining to our capital asset increased by $200,000 last year. In addition, there's also a $300,000 increase in our SIP, the Community Investment Program activities, which we have separated out in your financial report, and also the comparative fiscal year results. Our Community Investment Program includes activities such as the .ca award, the CIRA participation and funding support of BIN 10 and OpenDNSSEC, the Canadian Internet Forum, and also our sponsorship and planning around the most effective way to facilitate community creation of IXP, the Internet exchange points across Canada. Computer operations and networking includes space that CIRA has leased for our computer equipment at several locations across Canada. And for the registry, this is to house our registry and DNS services. These locations house hardware for the main system and also backup equipment and also DNS zone servers. Also included in this category are software subscription, maintenance, worldwide DNSSEC services, and support expenses. Under the communication, awareness, and education category, the expenses here are related to promotion and cooperative programs with our channel partners. It includes marketing, and it includes media monitoring, advertising, and also various sponsorship activities. Office and general administration reflects costs that is just pretty, well, running the CIRA office, such as rent, office expenses, telecom, insurance, bank charges, and payroll services, etc. Travel reflects expenditure for the organization, including international travel to represent and participate in ICANN and other internet community forums. So accordingly, CIRA ended our fiscal year 2012 with a board-approved planned deficit of $128,000 as opposed to the previous operating surplus of $1.3 million in fiscal year 2011. Now this concludes my presentation for the 2012 financial statements. Thank you very much, and I would like to invite Paul back to appoint our auditors.
KPMG has agreed to serve as CIRA's auditors until the next annual general meeting. I would ask now that we make a motion to appoint KPMG. And the motion would read as follows, and it will also be, I think, on the screen in a second. That KPMG be appointed as auditors of CIRA to hold office until the next annual general meeting or until their successors are duly appointed, and that the board of directors be authorized to establish the remuneration of the auditors. Would someone like to move said motion? Sir, right there. Name? Bill. Name is Sandiford. A seconder? Your name, sir? Peter, thank you. With the motion moved, I'll call to any discussion on the motion. If you wish to make a point, please approach a mic. I would point out that there will be a time for questions after this and after the bylaw on any of the presentations you see, but right now we're just dealing with the appointment of the auditors. So I do not see anyone coming to the mics, and I don't see an online question coming. So seeing none, it's again voter participation time. If you could please find your card. I'd ask those online to please vote now with the instructions. Again, just a quick reminder for those in the room, you'll raise your card that looks like this when asked. Please keep it held up until I ask you to lower it. So all those who wish to vote in favor of the motion, please raise your card. I think that's pretty clear. You can lower your card. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, just give me a second. We're just waiting for the online. I'm trying to up my awesome here as well, but it's not quite going as I... Okay, the motion carries. Thank you very much, everybody. We'll move on to the next item of the agenda, which are the bylaw changes. Earlier this summer, a CIRA member notice was sent to all our members regarding the need for CIRA to transition to the new Canada Not-for-Profit Corporations Act. The Government of Canada has recently implemented this new legislation, which governs all federally not-for-profit organizations such as CIRA. All federal not-for-profits must transition to the new act within a specific period of time. And in order to do so, CIRA must take certain steps, including replacing our letters patent, our bylaws, and other corporate charter documents with ones that comply. From April 2nd this year, we did hold an outreach regarding those bylaws and other changes. As I mentioned earlier, at this time, we will only be making the changes that are, we will be based on the feedback received from .ca members. CIRA has decided to proceed only with the changes we believe are essential to transition to the new legislations. The other additional streamlining changes that were sent for feedback will not occur at that time, and I just wanted to make that clear. The CIRA member package you received today includes 3 documents that should be in your pack. The member resolution to approve that CIRA continue under the new Canada Not-for-Corporations Act, the articles of continuance, and the proposed bylaws. These documents are required to transition to the new legislation. Much work has gone into preparing this proposal from our staff and in conjunction with our board and outside experts. The documents that you see were unanimously approved by the CIRA Board of Directors on July 25th, and a notice to all members with the documents was sent on August 8th. And at this time, I'd ask for a motion to confirm the member's resolution. I will not read it because it is rather long, but it is on the screen. Would somebody like to move said motion so we can move to the discussion? Sir, in the back there, your name, please? Simon Gray, thank you. And somebody, a seconder? Sir, your name? Steve, thank you. So, with the motion moved, I will open the floor to first any questions that anybody may have on anything they'd like to know to help understand the motion before us. Is there anybody who has a question? Is there anyone online looking like they will send a question? No. So we'll move into a discussion. Is there anybody that would like to discuss the motion that's on the table? Please approach Mike if you'd like. Going once, twice. Okay, we'll close the mics, and if we'll just double check that online. No questions online. Great. So we will now call for the vote. So this is your last time to stretch those arms. Again, I'd ask those online to vote right now. And those in the room, we are going to take a count of this one, so you're going to have to keep your hands up that little bit longer. And the reason is that this motion will require 2/3 to pass. So we just want to make sure that we're good in that regard. So all those in favor of the motion, please hold your card up high, and please keep it up until a counter asks you to put it down. They're going to come to each table and count each table, so please just bear with us. I guess I should keep it up myself. Appreciate your patience. Refreshments are coming soon. Bizstone are coming soon. And more of me, I know, but you just can't wait for that. Just a few more tables. So just bear with us 1 second as we do the math. I'd point out this is a good time to open up your web browser and read the candidate statements for the Board of Directors election that is currently underway. And, hold on. Oh. I'd now call for those opposed, and I thank Michael for pointing me out that I went a little too quickly. If you are opposed to the motion, could you please raise your card? I am going to say that I see none raised. So just a moment as we get the tabulation. And again, as I was saying, this would be a good time to quickly start reading some of the candidate bios. The election is a very important process. There's a campaign form that you can read as well. Just waiting for the... The next item we'll be going to, by the way, are questions. So if you do have a question that you'd like to ask about anything, there's no specific topic it has to be on, although something to do with CIRA is always beneficial. You can start thinking that up, and I'll open the mic shortly. And if you're online, you can start typing in now. So the tabulation is in. 97 in favor, 1 against. So I believe we have reached the 2/3. Thank you very much for that. We will now move on to members from questions. So if you do have a question, please approach the mic. And if you have a question online, please type it in. Microphone number 1. Please state your name and affiliation before your question, sir.
Jean-François Mézé, Vaccination Informatique. I've asked this before, but I'd like to have the board's feeling on this. Is there any thought going forward in the future of removing that middle layer called the resellers so that I, as a domain owner, can register directly with CIRA and bypass all the other guys? I ask this because of the mention that there's very little participation, and when I'm a customer of Hover, I'm not really associated with CIRA, even though the transaction ends up with you. If I were a customer of CIRA, I might have more relationship with you and be more involved.
Just to clarify your question, if I heard it, I'm sorry, I'm having a bit of a problem hearing. Did you say resellers, or did you mean also the removal of registrars?
The registrars,
okay.
Yeah. Just deal directly with CIRA.
Like anything, as we do our strategic planning, we look at all options such as that, but at this time there is no such intent to move that. We've enjoyed a competitive channel. It gives our end users lots of choice of service offerings and has generally been supported. So at this time, no. Thank you, sir. I have an online question from Daniel Fox. What are the biggest challenges still facing in the rollout of IPv6? There are numerous challenges. I think the number one problem that has, the two problems that have faced IPv6 rollout is, one is that it's not backwards compatible with IPv4, so unfortunately you have to run both. And there hasn't been a compelling business case because IPv4 has been working, people are still able on a day-to-day basis to connect, and most people are not even aware that there's an underlying. But I think with the depletion of IPv4 now becoming a reality, we'll start to see a lot more awareness in the coming year. So thank you for your question, M&A. Microphone number 2.
Yes, I'm Rick Steele from Yukon College.
Yep.
I was just wondering what the board's approach might be in future nomination procedures for the board. I was a candidate, or nominated myself as a candidate at the request of Yukon College, and I gave a not half-hearted, but I think
I'm sorry, could you speak a little farther? I'm just having, I don't know if the sound at the low end may be down. I can't hear you very well, sorry.
Okay, is this better?
That's much better, thank you.
I was wondering what the approach to future nominations for the board might be. As I said, I was asked by Yukon College to put my name up to serve on the board. I wasn't half-hearted about it, but I wanted to have low expectations because I could say, I don't know in the Yukon of anybody other than me who is a CIRA member, right? And so there was a barrier around that 20 possible support nominated for your nominations. I'm wondering if some kind of almost like electoral college approach, where you would have a certain number of volunteers, inside of our committee that would vet the original nominations, if that might allow for more, outriders like myself.
Okay, thank you very much for the suggestion. We do offer, one part of our election process is that a certain number of candidates are nominated by a nomination committee, so there's no requirement of 20 shows of support. You simply put an application in during the call, and there's a committee that looks and they get a report that says where we currently have gaps on the board, and we look at a lot of diversity. They look at a lot of diversity criteria, including geographic. So that's one way that we can address. And obviously, as I mentioned earlier, we're looking to make that process more transparent. And we could obviously look at a way to allow people who might be from smaller regions to, we have the election forum now, and look at other ways that you can, make your case to the membership and as a whole. Thank you. Microphone number 2.
Chris Tassett. I have a two-part question. First is, with regards to the change in the operating position of CIRA from 1.3 million to the minus 128, I'm just wondering if you could comment on the main drivers that led to that swing, and second, if there's a similar anticipated shortfall expected for the coming fiscal year, or that situation is expected to change.
Okay, just so we can give something to do, I'm going to ask Byron to address that question. Byron, can we get this microphone over here on, please, if it's not?
It's working. I'll find the range. Yes, it was a non-trivial swing, as you rightly point out. It was really comprised by two things. One is, and I'm sure our auditor will hate me to say this, but one is the real work. We undertook a number of major projects, which also required significant financial resources. So we did, as I mentioned, a major registry refresh. Much of the work around DNSSEC was done during that period. So those are major financial contributors to that number. The other is a change in accounting process. So for those of you who were watching the AGM last year, you'll note that we changed policies in terms of how we recognize revenue. And that's strictly an accounting-driven change. And what that means is we recognize the revenue not the minute we sell a domain, but over the life of that domain in a proportionate manner. So it sort of pushes the revenue we receive out in time, consistent with the life cycle of that domain name. So for the first year that gets implemented, it's had the effect of actually reducing the revenues, because some of the revenue will be captured next year instead of this year. So those are two of the main reasons why we've seen that kind of a swing. And I would suggest that it's really going to be a short-term swing.
Don't go far. We have a next question from M&A Online. Manane, sorry if I got the last name wrong. How much money will IPv6 cost CIRA? I don't know if you wanted to. It's a tough question to answer, which is why I, of course, gave it to Byron.
$1.75? It is a tough question to answer because, in part, it really depends on what are you considering the direct costs associated with it. Because there is gear that we have that isn't IPv6 compliant, that when the normal course would be refreshed over time anyway, but IPv6 is accelerating it. Is that a cost associated with IPv6? It's maybe a cost where we accelerated something we'd already do. So that's why I say that's the kind of issue where it's hard to say specifically how much does IPv6 adoption cost.
But as far as a project goes, overall, it's in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. Low versus high.
As somebody who's done a lot of work on IPv6 deployment, I would also just urge, if it's something you're looking at, the earlier you do it, the better, because it is something you can implement in your usual purchasing cycle. Whereas if you wait until it's too late, you might incur a lot of cost replacing equipment that might not be compliant. Okay, the online is definitely hopping here with questions, but if anyone in the room wants to come up. So the next question is from Des Dugan, and it's IPv6 time, I guess. We're all dependent on our ISPs, re-IPv6. What sort of lobbying is CIRA engaging in with Shaw, TELUS, Bell, etc.? Well, I don't think CIRA is engaging in any lobbying, because that's a different thing altogether. But we do a lot of outreach with organizations, Industry Canada, to try and encourage organizations. And we've also worked with a lot of the major ISPs on this and other issues that CIRA is involved in. So yes, we are in constant contact with them. This is the last call for questions. Oh. Are you coming to the mic, sir? Or are you? Go ahead, sir.
Yes, my name's John Andersen. I own my own domain. I have two related questions. One with respect to the IPv6 that we've just been talking about. You've made reference to the fact that IPv4 names are already running out in various parts of the world.
Yep.
Not yet here in North America, but you've been giving me the impression that the big storm wave is about to break. And what I'm wondering, what is the sticking point? What has to happen before people start to take this seriously, which means making the investments? Who's up first? And maybe I'm asking you to name names. Maybe that's not right.
So, yes, North America is coming. And I think it's important to understand very quickly that IP addresses, there's the worldwide pool, because each address has to be unique. That's handed out to 5 organizations, each handling a regional area. ARIN is the one from North America, and as a small disclosure, I'm involved on their board as well. And then ARIN allocates to either end users, organizations, or ISPs. So in the V4 sense, the central pool has allocated everything, and the regional registries are going through their last blocks. And yes, as I pointed out, 2 are very close to empty, and if you go to ARIN.net, you can actually see a daily counter of how much we have left. It's true that there's a lot of stuff that has to get moving, if I understand your question correctly, to get IPv6 rolling a bit more. It has to be better deployed in the software that we use. The ISPs have to support it. They have to have all their underlying equipment. An organization like CIRA has to upgrade all the software that runs the DNS, the routers, the switches. So it's just a matter of getting a bit of the, there's a ton of these pieces that have to come together. But we are seeing a lot of deployment. A lot of ISPs in the regions I mentioned are well ahead in the deployment for obvious reasons. We've seen a lot of the US and Canadian ISPs starting to announce plans, so it does seem that it is coming, but I think it is just going to be as that pressure comes and suddenly you're out, that you'll feel that a lot of people starting to make the move. Does that answer your question?
I asked the question in the sense of, one of these days it's going to break. What, in your view, what will be the trigger?
What will be the trigger? I assume it's the first time that cutting application, the awesome application that comes out, and for some reason you can't access it because your ISP or the equipment you're on is only supporting IPv4, and no one knows what that killer app is going to be, but I think you'll see it soon, because the problem with, as we get into depletion, is it does start to break a lot of applications that we use today with some of the measures that ISPs have to use to deal with the period as we do transition. So I don't know what that app is, but I think you'll see just one day there's an app that everybody has to use, and suddenly there'll be a great rush for ISPs to support it.
I'm sorry, I'm going to...
Okay. Yeah. You can not let me go?
You mentioned that even CIRA is going to have to make, I think you said CIRA itself is going to have to make a lot of investments when that time comes. Is that money already been allocated? Is there a time frame going to be required to actually bring the IPv6 on site?
So I'll start, and Byron, add anything you want, which is that, so as I noted earlier, CIRA already has a lot of its infrastructure already online today. Many of the DNS servers are online, the website and other functionality online. And I do know that our registry systems are already well underway. The development's underway. I can see Jacques nodding. So we'll be seeing that roll out over the next few months. And so I would say that most of the costs are allocated, but there could be some. I don't know, Byron, did you want to add something in regard to the cost allocation item?
No, I think you've Lee well covered it. A bunch of the work was done in the last fiscal year. A considerable amount more is being done this fiscal year, which has been budgeted for. So it's certainly something that we've been very well aware of in terms of IPv6 adoption being a multi-staged effort that requires both human capital and financial capital to do. So it's a project very much in hand and budgeted for.
My changing topics a little bit, you've mentioned IXPs, and I understand from the discussion that in essence the idea is to try and have more internet traffic routed within Canada.
Mm-hmm.
So the question I have is, who in fact is implementing this and who's going to pay for it? Because my understanding of that is that doing that is not a CIRA responsibility.
It's most definitely not just a CIRA responsibility. IXs tend to be community-driven entities. So in any given geographic area, a group of participants in an IX would come together. They will typically be internet service providers, content creators, distributors like Google or CBC. So the people who are pushing lots of data onto the internet and the people who are distributing data out to the eyeballs of the internet, as well as other members. But if you think of that type of organization, those are the community members who would be in an IX. We're using our neutral, non-commercial entity, CIRA, to bring those people together in a neutral environment, because they're often competitors, to get them together to form IXs. And we've been doing that across cities in Canada already. We may incur some of our own costs to do that. We tend to also be a member of them, because it's in our own interest to deploy .ca servers, NTP, Network Time Protocol servers, and other services in there for our own reasons, and it improves the performance of the internet in Canada, keeps more traffic in Canada, both of which we think are good for the Canadian internet ecosystem. And we're going to be willing to expend some resources to do that, but only our share.
Thank you for your questions. Before I go to, I think, our last question or two, and I think we're going to close off the mics at this point. If you want to know how IPv6 adoption or awareness is going, I've been with CIRA for 10 years, and this is by far the most questions we've ever had about IPv6 in 10 years. So clearly the awareness is going up. I lost my online question. Thank you. From Robert Ballantyne, what is CIRA's policy or plans for managing cyber squatters? And I was wondering if maybe either Michael or Byron wanted to deal with that. Michael's our... Second.
Thanks. CIRA doesn't have a policy per se dealing with cyber squatters. If a registrant feels that someone else has taken their domain or you have rights in their domain, CIRA does have a policy to deal with that, our dispute resolution policy. If it's outside of a trademark type dispute, then that's a private matter between two parties. So CIRA generally as a registry is a first come first served registry. We offer the process, the Canadian dispute resolution process for people who have issues between themselves, but otherwise CIRA doesn't unilaterally involve itself in third-party disputes.
Thanks. Last question, sir. Your name?
Thank you.
No,
how far? My name's David Cuddy, and I'm affiliated with Cuddy.ca,
okay.
which means I'm an individual. I have a policy question, but it goes back to the IPv4, IPv6 exhaust topic, which seems to be
the topic of the day.
Much on everybody's mind.
Yes.
Although there were statements before that the global pool is nearing exhaust, there is a large block of IPs that were assigned to a Canadian, well-known Canadian company here in Ottawa about 20 years ago. It's 47/8 block, and for those of you not familiar, if memory serves, it's about 1,000 million IP addresses that were assigned to a company here in Ottawa. There's a lot of discussion from what I've read about whether those IPs are owned by a company or a bankrupt company, and as such can be sold as an asset. And I understand of the 47.8 blocks, some have already been purchased by a large American company. There's other opinions that those IPs should accrue to the Canadian internet market in order to help the Canadian internet environment flourish, and yet others that believe they should be returned back to the pool to be administered by Aaron or whoever. So I'm wondering if CIRA has a policy on ownership of IPs, and if so, how are you ensuring that the 47 block .0.0.0 get effectively reallocated?
So the quick answer to your question is no, we do not have a policy, and the reason for that is that CIRA does not deal with the assignment and registration of IP addresses in Canada. That's dealt with, again, by the organization AARON, which serves Canada, the United States, and parts of the Caribbean. They do have policies that they've initiated, again, I'm on their board, so I am aware of it, so I don't mind commenting on it. We have so policies on all address allocation are done by community. We have a meeting similar to this twice a year that anyone is welcome to come, and there's also great remote participation. So all policies come from the community itself in our bottom-up consensus-based policy method. The policy that was passed, I'm forgetting the exact time frame, but I'm just going to say about a year or two ago, does allow for organizations to return their address base so that they can be reallocated into the systems, and thus they do benefit Canada in that regard. And if you do have any comments on that policy, and whether or not it should be changed and all that, I would encourage you to go over to aaron.net and you can read up on you're welcome to join that list and put your comment in, and it'll be well accepted. I do guarantee you that. So thank you for your question. With that, I just have one last item of business that I'd like to get before we take a break. And I just wonder if you could indulge me for a moment to thank some directors who have left us since the last time we met, or will be leaving us shortly. I'd just like to say some personal thanks to first Director Tom Williams, who had some other issues that he had to deal with, and so thus could not continue with us. He was a great director who brought a great entrepreneurial spirit for 3 years to our board, and we send him our thanks. We also have Director Barry Schell, who is ending his term after 4 years. He's actually here today, but over there. And he's been a very enthusiastic supporter of public interest on the board, and we thank him very much for his time. And finally, I also thank Rick Andersen, who left due to time commitments recently. He was a long-time contributor to this board, on the board for almost 10 years. He's probably well known here in the Ottawa area, and I'd just like to send all three of them the membership's thanks. And if you'll indulge me, I'd like to, on behalf of the membership, move a motion to thank all three directors for their time and contribution to CIRA. And I'll just move that unanimously, if that thing. Thank you. And with that, it is time to adjourn, and I will entertain a motion to adjourn if one wanted to be made. Not all at once, because Mr. Sanford again, and you got it half up. And sorry, your name again, sir? Simon Gray. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we are adjourned. We will take a 20-minute break. The refreshments are available where you registered, and then we will come back for our last keynote speaker. Thank you very much, everybody.